So this is going to be really interesting on Sunday. We're going to get to see two quarterbacks who came from the very opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to the NFL draft on opposite sides of the field. Brock Purdy, the 24-year-old Brock Purdy, doesn't turn 25 until later this month, against Caleb Williams, the rookie of the Chicago Bears, who turned 23 last month. So in this little window, and that happens to be the window in which the 49ers will host the Bears. Brock Purdy is 24. Caleb Williams is 23. So, this is one of those situations where you look at the perception of both quarterbacks and you are astounded by how differently the media and fans have treated them. Brock Purdy came out of college as pick number 262 in the 2022 draft. And despite the fact that he's been at the top of league charts in efficiency ever since then, literally since the 2022 season when Brock Purdy first began playing for the 49ers, he has been the most efficient quarterback in football, above Patrick Mahomes, above Joe Burrow, above Josh Allen. Caleb Williams, meanwhile, has done absolutely nothing in the NFL except deliver inefficient football so far this year with a few nice throws peppered in between. And there's still a lot of people saying that he's the second coming at the quarterback position. One of these quarterbacks was born with the assumption of greatness. I don't want to say expectation. We'll say the assumption of greatness. That's Caleb Williams. And the other one of these quarterbacks was thrust into the NFL with the need to prove himself over and over and over again. Here's how the performance has gone this season for Brock Purdy and for Caleb Williams. You want to be further to the right and further up on the chart. Offensive grade is on the x-axis, adjusted EPA per play, so that's going to be expected points added, so that is demonstrated efficiencies on the y-axis. So further to the right and further up, the PFF grade along with the adjusted EPA is highly correlated, as you can tell, through the upward diagonal trend of the graph. Purdy, again, is in the top right this season. There you have Brock Purdy. Near Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray having a nice year. There's Patrick Mahomes. Meanwhile, Caleb Williams is down, not where you want to be. He's toward the bottom end, I think, of the middle pack of quarterbacks. He's not where Cooper Rush is. By the way, Trey Lance hasn't even been able to leapfrog Cooper Rush on the Dallas depth chart, which gives you an idea of where Trey Lance is in the league right now. But Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, these are bottom-tier quarterbacks. Caleb Williams has been a little bit better for Chicago this year, but he's still nowhere near where the top quarterbacks in the league are. And, before people go out and say, well, Caleb Williams is a rookie, well, Brock Purdy was a rookie in 2022. And when Brock Purdy was a rookie, he wasn't down here. When Brock Purdy was a rookie, he was up here. And then people will say, oh, well, Caleb Williams doesn't have a good situation. And that's just not true. Caleb Williams has probably been thrust into the best situation of any number one pick in recent memory. There are weapons on this Chicago Bears team. They have a good offensive line as well. They have the number 6 rated offensive line in pass block efficiency or pass block win rate this season. But DJ Moore, who came over from Carolina in a big trade a couple years ago, Rome Odunze, first-round pick for the Chicago Bears at wide receiver, Keenan Allen, the veteran, formerly of the Chargers on this team, then that good offensive line, and then you've got some tight ends. Remember the Bears would only draft tight ends back in the day? I kid, but only partly. I mean, that was the running joke that Chicago was running a draft of 7 tight ends. DeAndre Swift, the former Philadelphia Eagle, is their running back, plus a solid defense. I mean, Caleb Williams is working with a good team around him. And he came in with these huge expectations. I mean, expectations that were absolutely ridiculous when he first came into the league. People were saying that he was a slam dunk, surefire, efficient quarterback. That's never existed coming into the NFL. The closest that we've seen to that has been Andrew Luck and maybe before then Peyton Manning. But even then, there's no such thing as surefire success in the NFL. With those two guys, you get close to it, but with Caleb Williams, he was nowhere near surefire in, I think, the eyes of actual football people. This was a media construct. The problem with Caleb Williams is that he did not have to play on time in order to have offensive success at USC. Lincoln Riley's offense at USC was not an offense that you could watch and say, okay, this is going to translate to the pro game, where the football needs to be out typically in 2.7, 2.8 seconds or less. In college, you can get away with not being on time. You can run around. You're a better athlete than everybody else. You can wheel around, spin your hips, and fire downfield. And at USC, where your receivers are going to be better athletes than a lot of the competition, especially when they're back in the Pac-12, they're probably going to have yards of separation in between themselves and the defensive backs. So there is no precision necessary. Athleticism can usually carry the day with some of these talented college teams. And that's what Caleb Williams put on tape. There was a lot of running around. There were a lot of wow plays, but he was never doing the mundane stuff, which actually wins games at the NFL level well. He was never dropping back and having to throw precisely with timing into a tiny window 2.4 seconds after the snap. And maybe that's something that he'll develop and pick up, but that wasn't what he was asked to do at USC. And that's a criticism of the offense at USC more than it is of Caleb Williams, but it's also a criticism of how people mistakenly evaluate quarterbacks. They look, and this even happens at the NFL executive level, they'll look at a guy, they'll see the athleticism, and then they'll completely disregard the actual technique with which he's had to play the position at college, and they'll say, oh, surefire number one pick. And then they're surprised when the guy starts scoring like this despite a good situation around him. Listen, Caleb Williams has been sacked 49 times this year. That is the most in the NFL. 41 is the next highest. This despite the fact that Chicago's offensive line ranks number 6. So their line ranks near the top. He's taken the most sacks. What does that tell you? The sacks are the quarterback's fault. By and large, are the quarterback's fault. That means he's not playing on time, because in the NFL, if you don't get rid of the ball in that time frame, in some plays it's 2.4 seconds, some plays it's 3.2 seconds, but generally you've got to get rid of it at a very quick window. If you're not making the decisions fast enough, then it doesn't matter how much you can move in the backfield, because the athletes that are chasing you at the NFL are next level compared to the athletes who are chasing you in college. So the early metrics for Caleb Williams are not pretty. And the early metrics for Brock Purdy were really good. However, both of these quarterbacks are being treated very differently in public perception. When the team of one of these guys struggles, that's Brock Purdy, all of a sudden he's not even eligible for a new contract anymore, according to some. But the truth is that the metrics say that Brock Purdy has remained good, while the quarterback on the other side this week has not been good. What's going to be fascinating is that Purdy and Williams face markedly different defenses this week. Purdy is going to have to face a Bears defense which ranks number 5 against the pass, while Caleb Williams is going to get to face a 49ers defense that is ranked second to last overall in the NFL over the past 2 weeks. So the Bears have a better defense than the 49ers. And I think that could be the big equalizing factor in this game. If the 49ers defense shows up and they're average in this game, and Nick Bosa is doubtful, we should put that out there right now. But if they somehow manage to deliver an average performance, the 49ers should win. They might even win going away. But if this unit performs at bottom barrel levels again without Nick Bosa and with Fred Warner playing on his fractured ankle, well, that's going to open the door for Williams to close the efficiency gap. Because QB play alone in a vacuum here, when we try to isolate it and measure it without any other noise, when we do our best, I know it's impossible to fully do that, but QB play alone, the 49ers have a big advantage efficiency-wise with Purdy over Caleb Williams. By the way, I love, for the stat nerds out there, adjusted EPA per play. This is not just normal EPA per play. This is adjusted EPA per play. It's taken into account drops and other things that are definitely outside the quarterback's control. Look at the correlation that shares with PFF offensive grade. What you want to see is a nice tight grouping around the diagonal dotted line. If the points are scattered on both sides of it, then that's not a very tight correlation. Here you've got a nice correlation, which tells you that these are probably two good metrics to pair up when it comes to evaluating quarterback play. And Purdy's not too far from that line. Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Jameis Winston are all exactly on it. So there's not all too much outlier stuff to glean from Brock Purdy as there would be from somebody like Jordan Love, who's been extremely efficient, but his offensive grade has not been as high, which tends to suggest that Matt LaFleur is having a really good season calling plays. And that's interesting because we talked about the play caller rankings the other day and the play caller chart, which showed the play caller effectiveness. Out of the Shanahan tree, and we'll include Matt LaFleur as part of it. Out of the Shanahan tree, LaFleur was the only one maybe that was having a good season relative to the ones before. And even that was a little sketchy, but it seemed that he was definitely outperforming Kyle Shanahan. He was outperforming Sean McVay, Bobby Slowick, other guys in that entire tree. Well, you see that possibly reflected in this chart with Jordan Love so high up here, yet grading relatively low, according to PFF. If Love's EPA matched the line here, he would be where Lamar Jackson was, but he's not in terms of PFF grade. Now, all of this is imperfect, I understand, but that's why we try to get as much data as possible to blow through our biases, because biases will happen everywhere. So you do try to incorporate as much information as you possibly can. And this is what we have now. But as far as the matchup goes on Sunday, Brock Purdy doesn't play Caleb Williams. Brock Purdy plays the Bears defense. Caleb Williams doesn't play Brock Purdy. Caleb Williams plays the 49ers defense. And that's where, even though Nick Bosa is doubtful, it's where I wonder how often the 49ers are able to get to Caleb Williams in this game. Because the Bears offensive line is good. Now, the 49ers have not been a terrible pass rushing team. Where they have struggled is run defense. And the problem is, if you're bad at run defense, you lower your opportunities to pass rush. You lose your chance to actually play the football game. Today, Kyle Shanahan said, if a football game is played on Sunday, we like our chances. He was implying that a football game had not been played over the past 2 weeks. And I see what he means. The Green Bay Packers showed up and ran the 49ers defense out of the building. The Buffalo Bills showed up and ran the 49ers defense out of the building. If you cannot stop the run, the game is over. Remember, the 49ers used to run other teams over and the game was over, be done by the second quarter, sometimes even the first quarter. I still remember the NFC Championship game against the Packers at the end of the 2019 season. That's what happens if you administer a run game that the other team cannot slow down or doesn't slow down enough. And it buys you ultimate game control. The 49ers have been on the losing side of that equation, and they have to make sure that they're on the winning side of that equation this time. Because while Caleb Williams might be the number 25 ranked QB in terms of efficiency this year, the Bears are a little bit better running the ball with DeAndre Swift, their number 19, and Williams can run himself a little bit. There could even be a little bit of a designed run game from a team running an interim coach out there. So the 49ers are going to have to prove that they could slow Chicago in the run game, because over the past 2 weeks, they have completely lost control of the game with their defense being unable to slow down the run. But on the offensive side of the ball, this is an opportunity for Brock Purdy, who I think has proven time and time again that he's made of the right stuff. There's no debate amongst legitimate football voices that Brock Purdy is in line to get his big contract. And his performance this season, as you can see up here, he's back in the upper right, has done nothing to change that assumption entering this season. He's not going to be eligible for it until the end of this regular season. But regardless of what the 49ers team is doing around Brock Purdy, there's so many things that are outside of his control. If he keeps on delivering at the same way that he's delivering right now, things are going to be fine. Somebody in the comment section earlier said he needs to show that he can come from behind in the fourth quarter. This is where the general public and the media is so unfair to Purdy. Why does he have to show that he can come from behind in the fourth quarter when he already did that twice in the playoffs last year against the Green Bay Packers, and then the week later against the Detroit Lions. Oh, wait, against the Lions, he came back in the third quarter. He was behind by a lot, his team was, but he led a comeback that was so fast that he got it done before the fourth quarter even started. So I guess it technically doesn't count, but Purdy obviously aced the test against the Lions. The 49ers' most recent win this year, they were behind in the fourth quarter, and Brock Purdy led them back with some sensational all-star level plays. First to Christian McCaffrey and then to George Kittle in the back corner of the end zone. Against Seattle, he let it go ahead and drive in the fourth quarter. I mean, Purdy has shown that he can do what a top quarterback needs to do. Has he been perfect? No. Have any of the QBs on this chart been perfect? No. He's held to a different standard because he's pick number 262. And when you compare it to the standard that somebody like Caleb Williams is held to, the standard that says that Caleb Williams is great and a perfect pick for the Bears, no matter how little he's done in the NFL, you can start to see the draftism bias between these two quarterbacks. Anyway, Brock Purdy has shown that he's made of the right stuff, and this is a new challenge for Brock Purdy because the 49ers have been at the top of the league in both of his first two seasons at the helm. Now they're not at the top of the league. Now there are things crumbling around him that are many of which are outside of his control. But how is he going to handle these last 5 games of the regular season? What's his mental approach going to be? What is his leadership approach going to be? He answered a lot of those questions today at Levi's Stadium.
That's just sort of how the last 3 games have gone. But, dude, that's the NFL. This game is physical. You got to be able to, overcome those kinds of things and find a way. And I feel like the good teams, the good players, they don't have excuses. They find a way to get it done for their team and, give it their all when they can, physically when they can. So that's just been, how the last 3 games have gone. But for me, it hasn't been woe is me. I'm like, dude, that's the NFL. That's life, and that's the challenge in front of us, and what are we going to do about it? So it's more of, as motivation for me, and how am I going to answer, this kind of stuff, and how am I going to be there for my team when things aren't always perfect? This is, I think, really where you see people for who they are. And so that's how I'm looking at it. And honestly, I'm excited for the challenge. I think I'm the guy for that. So.
Purdy, by the way, for his Mike Cause Mike Cleats, is going to be helping hurricane relief in North Carolina. So you'll probably notice his cleats at the game this Sunday against the Chicago Bears. They're pretty colorful, so they should stand out, and I'm sure that they'll zoom in on them during the TV broadcast. But you heard him say you really find out who people are when things aren't going great. So we're probably going to find out a little bit more about Brock Purdy's leadership style. And you also probably heard him say that he thinks he's the right man for this job. So win or lose, the 49ers are going to want Brock Purdy to continue guiding the team as best he can from his quarterback vantage point. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be successful. Some teams are just too flawed or too injured or a combination of both to push across the finish line in some of these games. And it's not necessarily the quarterback's fault. Everybody wants an easy target to blame. And since the quarterback touches the ball on every single play, it's the simpletons, right? The simpletons of football fandom and football analysis will always point to that quarterback position. But I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you. It isn't that simple. It's a more complex sport. It's a nuanced sport. And in the case of Purdy, another example this year, it's Joe Burrow. You've got guys who are playing well at the quarterback position, but the team around them has prevented more wins. All the 49ers had to do, and Kyle Shanahan talked about this. I'm going to play a video from Kyle Shanahan here in a second. They needed to enter that Green Bay game at 6-4. Because then they could have lost Green Bay and they could have lost Buffalo, and they still would have been in solid position right now at 6-6. It's the 5-7 that's giving the 49ers a lot of trouble right now. To enter that game at Green Bay at 6-4, the 49ers just needed to beat the Rams in week 3, the Cardinals in week 5, or the Seahawks in, week 11? I think it was week 11 for the Seattle Seahawks. So let's go back to the very first one, the easiest of those wins against the worst team. The Rams were really injured in week 3. Brock Purdy put up borderline historic numbers in that game. Without Deebo Samuel, with Brandon Ayuk still not in form, Brock Purdy went out there and delivered nearly half an expected point per play. Like, the efficiency was off the charts. He was awesome against the Rams. Yet somehow, some way, his team still found a way to lose the game. Now, there are a lot of people to blame. Brock Purdy was not one of them in that game. It was actually a sensational game from the quarterback position. The lasting image of error for the 49ers was Ronnie Bell dropping a dime, a deep dime from Brock Purdy that would have put the 49ers in position to win. But there was a missed field goal from Jake Moody in there. There were defensive breakdowns from the 49ers. It was a bad situation where the 49ers took a great quarterback performance from Brock Purdy, crumpled it up, and threw it into the trash. Had the team not done that, the 49ers would have been, even if they lost the subsequent games to Arizona and to the Seattle Seahawks, and there's an argument to be made that they would have been more successful down the road had they notched a confidence-building win in week 3. But even if they had lost to Arizona and to Seattle, the 49ers would still be 6-4 entering Green Bay and Buffalo. You take losses to Green Bay and Buffalo, and you're 6-6 right now instead of 5-7, and you're in a whole lot better place. That's just a really cursory overview of how blaming the quarterback above all else is idiotic, because the quarterback has actually been playing well for the 49ers this season. Again, this is professional football. No quarterback is perfect. You grade on a scale in the NFL. And this is a pretty damn good scale to look at. The good guys are in the upper right, and then it gets worse and worse as you move to the lower left of the graph. Kyle Shanahan talked about how the 49ers needed to handle that early part of the season better. I thought that this was fantastic analysis from Kyle Shanahan. You know, it's stuff that we've talked about on the show a lot, but when you hear it from the head coach, then it gives everything a new level of validity and connectedness to the building. Listen to Kyle Shanahan talking about where the 2024 49ers got knocked off track.
Getting back to you saying that you thought that you might be 8-2. Is that something that you do every year?
No, it's not that I thought we should have been 8-2. Yeah, we were 5-5, and I believe there was 3 games that we let get away that we should have won. That doesn't mean that we'd have been much of a different team at 8-2 than 5-5, but it's how you improve as the year goes.
You do that every year, sort of map out how you think it might go?
No, I didn't. I didn't really do that this year. I'm just saying I know where our team's at after training camp. And I know where I want to be. And I thought we could get there as it got to a harder part of our schedule. And we didn't take advantage of the easier part of our schedule, is what I'm saying, with those 3 games. And when we did get to it, we weren't in a place to give ourselves some cushion, because I thought we were wounded when we got to the harder part. And that was a challenge we put ourselves in.
What was your level of concern at the end of training camp then, with all the injuries and everything that happened at that point?
I just knew we weren't where I wanted to be, which rarely you are exactly at the beginning of the year. That's why you play, and that's why you get better as it goes. And that's what I was planning to do. That's always the goal. We weren't able to consistently do that. It seemed like every time we took a step forward, we took 2 steps back. And that was kind of how it went. And once you lose some close games, ones you think you should have won, that's the difference between being 5-5 at the halfway point and being 8-2 at the halfway point from a record standpoint, not just the overall where your team's at.
So that's Kyle Shanahan. I think it's simple math. I think that the 49ers lost 3 games that they should have won. Those became doubly, even triply, even quadruply damaging because they came within the division. You know, it would have been a different story had they lost to the Jets instead of the Rams, or, even the Vikings instead of the Cardinals. But the division losses are what would put the 49ers in such a tough spot right now, because even if they're able to pull into ties with some of these teams, or all of them, it's less likely than it would have been that they're going to win some of these tiebreakers, because they look at division and conference record for the tiebreakers. There obviously still is a path for the 49ers, which is why they have to keep on fighting. And at this point, I would say that making the postseason, all things considered, given the tragedy that's afflicted this team, given the injuries, given the combination of everything, making the postseason would be probably one hell of an accomplishment for the 49ers, especially considering the fact that they would have to dig themselves out of a hole that they created with some of those losses to NFC US teams. But I don't think it's very valuable to, chart this out on a full-scale basis. I think it's a one game at a time thing. And if you look at that in a process-oriented way, even if the 49ers don't get the help that they're going to need to get from other results around the league, we're going to be able to see the development of the team as it prepares not only for a potential 2025 playoff run, which is unlikely, like 2025 January playoff run, but also a 2025 season retool, which is going to be fascinating. 49ers will have a lot of decisions to make, as they always do over the course of this offseason, and these next 5 games can provide a ton of intel. Brock Purdy has already shown that he's made of the right stuff. He can continue to prove that. Then the negotiations will formally be able to open up after the regular season ends. Even if the 49ers make the playoffs, contract negotiations can technically start right when the 49ers finish off against Arizona. But this is indeed a new challenge for Brock Purdy as the 49ers try to fight through losing record adversity on his watch. They were big-time winners in 2022 and 2023, and now they're just trying to scrap and claw their way back to 500 before they can think of anything else. There's a chance the 49ers are back at 500 a week from now. They played 2 games in 5 days. So it's the Bears coming into Levi's on Sunday, and then the Rams coming into Levi's on Thursday. The Rams have had some offensive issues on their end. Sean McVay not having a great year for LA. That's something that we're going to talk about a lot over the course of this next week. The Bears, of course, well, they fired their head coach. They're coming off that ugly finish against the Lions where neither Matt Eberflus nor Caleb Williams knew what they were doing, and they let the clock expire with a timeout still in their back pocket. It's one of the reasons why Caleb Williams is here on the chart, because he just has not managed games well, and that's the first job of the quarterback position so far this season. I managed my dinner well today, by the way. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Dutch Goose in Menlo Park. This is one of the best burgers in the Bay Area. It comes on that roll, and then, you know, I'll go back there to the 49ers memorabilia in a second, but the double cheeseburger from the Dutch Goose, quality stuff. We're going to rewind here and pause. That is some 49ers memorabilia on the wall. Signed by Bill Walsh at the very top. Joe Montana, Steve Young. I wasn't sitting at that table, so I couldn't get the closer shot for you. I did get a closer shot of this stuff, though. Stanford, John Elway, Buster Posey, and then there's the famous Bill Walsh, Joe Montana picture. From the Dutch Goose at Menlo Park, there's Elway. From the early 1980s, maybe the late 1970s at Stanford. The more famous place is the Canyon Inn for 49ers purposes. That's like Disneyland for 49ers fans. The 49ers facility used to be in Redwood City. The Canyon Inn in Emerald Hills above Redwood City used to be the old hangout for the 49ers players. They have so much 49ers stuff. They've got the hacksaw burger there. It's awesome. The Dutch Goose is more of a Stanford hangout. It's in Menlo Park. But Stanford and the 49ers have been connected for so long that they also have a ton of 49ers stuff. It is a great, great dive with an amazing double cheeseburger. One of the most satisfying meals in the Bay Area. So you can go and get it. That's our feature food today. The Dutch Goose in Menlo Park. San Francisco Standard. This is exciting. You can now buy a membership to the San Francisco Standard. It's up on the screen right there. Go to sfstandard.com/membership. And there are going to be so many cool little perks to go with it. A complimentary first month at Fitness SF is one of them. And then we're going to have a ton of events, and you're going to get priority access to events. Like, we've already done some fan events here in the past, but it will be events that are more organized and probably will offer a little bit more. I promise to be at some of them. That's all going to be part of what you'll get with a San Francisco Standard membership. So if you want to support our 49ers coverage, especially entering this whole team building process that's going to last for the next several months, you will get the most in-depth look at how the 49ers are constructing financial Tetris of the salary cap and preparing to get their team into position to roar out of the gate in 2025. If you want the most comprehensive coverage of all that, then become a member of the San Francisco Standard. Go ahead and go to sfstandard.com patreon.com/membership to check it out. This just launched yesterday, so wanted to give you guys the good news. The memberships can all be joined at this page. Also, really good newsletters. You can sign up for the Sports Update newsletters. You just go down here and toggle it on, little on switch. Every single time that one of my articles comes up or one of Tim's articles comes up, you get it right here. Look, you can join for access and you could have the stories straight to your inbox. So this is a cool photo from the 49ers locker room in Buffalo. These are our predictions for the game against the Bears coming up this weekend. Brock Purdy against Caleb Williams. So we talk about Williams getting sacked so many times. It's bad. He hasn't been delivering on time. Typically, when quarterbacks haven't delivered on time early in their NFL careers, it's just not something that's all too acquired over time. I get there have been exceptions in the past, but it had not been a promising start for Caleb Williams and the Bears, who are a losing team despite having a lot of weapons on offense, a good offensive line, and a solid defense. The 49ers defense, though, has been bad news Bears as well, pun intended with the Bears. 49ers defense, again, second to worst in football over the past 2 weeks. There have been so many staggeringly bad stats for the 49ers defense. I can go through a few of them, but some of you may cringe as we talk about the struggles of what San Francisco has gone through on the defensive side of the ball. Rushing defense is number 28, which is really bad. Everything from stuff rate, along the rushing defense, the missed tackle rate against the run is in the 20s for the 49ers. A lot of it's very indicative of the fact that, the personnel has just been drained. I find it troubling, though, that the 49ers of 2018, before Nick Bosa showed up, ranked much better against the run than these 49ers, the ones that, are supposed to have some championship pedigree, do in 2024. Back in 2018, we understood that the lack of an edge rusher, it was huge. Cassius Marsh was the 49ers' top edge rusher in that 2018 season. We understood that the inability to constrict the pocket was extremely damaging for the defense. Robert Saleh was the coordinator. At the time, I said, Saleh's doing a good job. He's limiting opponents to decent yards per play by keeping everything in front of him. But the 49ers are not creating turnovers. Their defense was way too soft because they had no other choice. They had an NFL record low 2 interceptions, and that all changed when Nick Bosa and Dee Ford joined the next year. By 2021, the 49ers had morphed into one of the best run defenses in football. Down the stretch of that season was when that truly happened. Eric Armstead moving inside was massive for the 49ers. In 2022, they were the number 1 run defense in football. The decline for the 49ers defense truly started last season when Steve Wilks came. They went from number 1 or number 2, depending on which metric you look at against the run, all the way down to number 26. And this year hasn't been any better. That decline has stretched out to number 28 against the run. And it's gotten to the point where the 49ers just aren't able to pass rush the way that they want to because they're not in the down and distance thanks to their poor run defense in that regard. It's just this domino effect of loss of game control for the 49ers that has been very, very brutal. So the 49ers in 2018 were the number 11 run defense in football by EPA per play. Let that sink in. 2018 was the year before Nick Bosa was drafted. The 49ers were personnel deficient. Their run defense ranked number 11 in the NFL. This year, obviously, the loss of Bosa has been huge. The Fred Warner fractured ankle has been huge. The loss of Javon Hargrave has hurt as well. But this year, the 49ers are number 28 against the run. They need to be better than the dark ages of 2018. That was before they were able to turn things around on the defensive side of the ball. So do I think a lot of it's schematic? Yes. Do I think a lot of it are communication issues? Yes. Is that, everything is tied together. So you have talent deficiencies as well with some of these injuries. I get it. Nick Bosa was gluing a lot of things together. I think this year has shown that Nick Bosa is better than a lot of people give him credit for because we see how bad it is without him. But the 49ers need to find some more organizational resilience. And that starts with Nick Sorensen and obviously elevates up to Kyle Shanahan. Beyond that, they need to find a way to manufacture better run defense, even without Nick Bosa out on the field. And even when he was on the field, they were still at around number 20. Now it's sunk to number 28. They've been the second worst defense in football overall ever since Nick Bosa went down. Second worst only to the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 4-8 despite the fact that Joe Burrow is playing really, really good ball. All right, I've shown you the Dutch Goose. I've shown you San Francisco Standard memberships. Now I'm going to show you Public Rec. Everybody needs to go check out publicrec.com, and you could use the code Lombardi at publicrec.com. They've got pants called the Game Changers, which are game changers indeed. If you're tired of squeezing into stiff dress pants, but you want to look nicer than somebody who's just wearing sweatpants, well, then the Game Changers from Public Rec are for you. Stop suffering in regular pants and give the gift of comfort this holiday season. For a limited time only, our listeners get 20% off when you use the code Lombardi at checkout. That's 20% off with the code Lombardi at publicrec.com. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Give yourself or someone you love the gift of comfort this holiday. With that, we're going to move to the 49ers Q&A. Guess what? I'm going to go watch Gladiator in about, I think the movie starts in about 30, 40 minutes, so I'm going to have to get going pretty soon. Gladiator 2. In case you hadn't noticed, over the course of a couple of years of shows and articles, I referred to Gladiator 1 quite often. That's one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie. My dad and I, one person will say a line from that movie and another person will automatically answer. We had got the whole movie memorized. And we've been doing that ever since 2000, and I think it was 1999, right? Maybe 2000. It's been essentially a quarter century since the first Gladiator came out. So I'm excited to see the second one. Please don't post any spoilers in the comment section because I'm probably going to wade into there and do a Q&A. But Gladiator is coming up on tap. It's been a fantastic Friday between the Dutch Goose, the drive back up to San Francisco, and now a chance for Gladiator. Somebody asked if Khalil Davis has played a snap yet. Yes, he has. He played 18 solid snaps. He was the 49ers' second highest graded defensive tackle against the Buffalo Bills. So he's been out there. Mike wants the 49ers to go get Jeff Ulbrich. If I had to predict right now who the defensive coordinator is going to be in 2025, I actually would predict Jeff Ulbrich because I don't know if he's going to last as the Jets coach. They've been 1-6 ever since he took over for Robert Saleh as the interim coach. What numbers do I think Isaac Guerendo puts up? Well, this is interesting because the Bears are number 22 EPA against the run. That being said, I think that because they've got great pass defense personnel, Kevin Byard, I know he's older, but he's one of their safeties. Jalen Johnson, though, out of Fresno, that is a truly special player at one of the cornerback positions. But because they've got this great pass defense personnel and because the 49ers don't have their best man-beating weapons in Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey available, I really think the Bears are going to dedicate extra resources to stopping the run to help out their run defense, which is ranked number 22. So I see quite a bit of man coverage on the back end, island coverage for Jalen Johnson and company. And it's going to be incumbent on the 49ers to beat that man coverage. So, and they haven't done a great job of that this year. Shanahan hasn't done a great job of scheming past that this year. So I'm not sure if they're going to have much running room unless they can beat that. Right. So that's the biggest key for the 49ers. It's going to be tight operations on the back end. But if Brock Purdy and the offense can generate the kind of room and the precision that needs to happen to beat that pass defense, I think stuff will open up for Isaac Guerendo. It might take Isaac Guerendo putting up some receiving numbers to set himself up for some rushing numbers in this game. So the Bears might have a tendency to run cover 3, but I'm not sure if they're going to run their normal amount of cover 3. We've seen teams move more to man specifically against the 49ers because of the 49ers struggles. So you've got tendencies of teams in general, but then you have their tendencies when they play the 49ers. I think the 49ers need to devise a screen game regardless of the type of defense that they face, man or zone. I think they need to find a way to burn defensive pressure with shorter passes, the layups. The easy button has not been there for Brock Purdy this year. I can probably go to the patent analytics graphic that I talked about earlier this week. By the way, that is awesome, awesome work that patent analytics does. Here we go. It's the easy button usage. I found it. Great. Just give me a second to get this up to where it needs to be. So this graphic is going to help answer your question about the screen passes, George. So on the x-axis, you've got the overall play calling score. So how much separation a play generates against the defense is going to determine where on the x-axis, left to right, a coach lands here. So further to the right is better. The y-axis is the easy button percentage. So the easy button is anytime a coach calls a screen, a play action, or an RPO. Shanahan had called the fewest amount of screens in the entire league entering the Buffalo game. Play action is also down. RPO also down, although that was never huge for the 49ers. Look where Shanahan has schemed the least easy plays for Brock Purdy in the entire league. Way down here. So the play calling score hadn't been great either. Last year, Shanahan didn't scheme all that many gimmies out of the RPOs, play action, and screens, but he was way over here. He was more where Monken is from the Baltimore Ravens. So Shanahan, his effectiveness calling plays this year has regressed, and the easy button percentage has gone down. I think, and we saw it last week, 7 screens for the 49ers in Buffalo. The one thing I'm concerned about for them, though, is that those 7 happened in a game that was a snow game. Is Shanahan going to rededicate himself to some of the shorter, easier throws now with 66-degree weather in the sunshine at Levi Stadium on Sunday? I think that's really important in the larger chess match of things as Kyle Shanahan looks to regain his fastball. And I think that sometimes when you're in the weeds of things on a week-to-week basis in the regular season, it's hard for a coach to self-scout. It's hard to see where some of the tendencies are bad. You could watch on TV and you could be screaming at the TV saying the 49ers are at the 10-yard line. It's first down. They're going to run and then they're going to pass twice and the run's going to get stuffed. So the 2 passes are going to be hard to execute. I think sometimes from the overhead view, when you're at home or I'm watching at the press box, we can all see that. But being the coach and the chaos of the sideline, sometimes those tendencies, you're so stuck in the details that you lose sight of the bigger tendencies that defenses are preying on. And I think that's what the 49ers need to do better. I think there needs to be a return to some of the short passing game. There needs to be some less predictable play calling in places like the red zone. And that's how you get out of the funk if you're Kyle Shanahan. Now, the good news is that every single piece of data suggests that his quarterback is still really damn good. There's Brock Purdy performing this year. Do not let the media and the general public gaslight you. Brock Purdy is still a good quarterback. He has shown to be a good quarterback this year. The 49ers have that. They need to figure out a way to put this on a more cohesive page from a team-wide perspective. All right, time for me to go watch Gladiator. I'll let you guys know how it is. Stay tuned. Maybe a quick live after the movie. Probably not. Maybe something tomorrow. Definitely on that front. But Strength and Honor, we're going to go watch. This should be good.